worst engine of all time? Triumph V8. Hey gearheads, welcome back to Muscle Car Masters. Have you ever heard of the Triumph Stag? It's a British beauty, launched in 1970 that was aiming for the stars, a grand tourer that would take on the likes of the Aston Martin DB5 and Jaguar E-Type. But beneath that gorgeous flowing bodywork, a secret lurked. A secret so terrible, so disastrous, that it almost single-handedly sunk the entire car's legacy. We're talking about the Triumph V8, an engine that's earned a reputation as one of the worst ever put into a production car. But here's the twist. Even with all its flaws, the Stag's heart, this cursed Triumph V8, is still beating in 91% of the surviving cars. How is that possible? Is it a testament to the dedication of Stag owners? Or are these engines just that darn stubborn? Today, we're diving deep into the development of this engine, dissecting its fatal flaws and exploring the Stag's tragic downfall. We'll delve into the oversquare design, the nightmare of the water pump system, and the mind-boggling head stud arrangement that's plagued owners for decades. We'll also discuss the car's specs: a 2.9-liter single overhead cam, cast iron block, aluminum head V8 that was supposed to produce 145 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque. Instead, it became a symbol of British automotive woes, a cautionary tale of what happens when a car's performance gets overshadowed by its mechanical shortcomings. So buckle up and get ready to hear about the engine that's earned the worst ever title. And before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We've got a whole lot of automotive adventures coming your way. And if you have your own thoughts on the Triumph V8 or the Stag, leave a comment below. Let's get this story rolling. Origins and ambition. The Stag was launched in 1970 with a mission to rival the likes of the Jaguar E-Type and Aston Martin DB5. It boasted stunning styling, a unique T-bar roof, and a four-seat layout, but under that elegant exterior lurked a powertrain destined for disaster. Triumph, determined to showcase their engineering prowess, instead of using the readily available and perfectly capable Rover 3.5-liter V8, decided to go their own way, twinning their inline-4 engine into a 2.5-liter V8. It seemed like a clever move, but this birth of the beast turned out to be a path paved with mistakes. Initially, they planned for Bosch fuel injection, but reliability issues forced a switch to a less efficient twin carburetor setup, costing power. So, in a desperate attempt to regain lost horsepower, they bumped the displacement to 3.0 liters. But instead of stroking the crankshaft, they widened the cylinder bores. This might have yielded that extra half-liter, but it resulted in an over-square engine that choked on torque. And worse, it severely cramped the coolant passages, dramatically reducing the engine's internal cooling capacity. The design flaws piled up like a stack of bricks. A unique water pump, mounted on top of the engine and driven by a geared jackshaft, was notoriously prone to failure. The requirement for special corrosion-inhibiting coolant to prevent internal electrolytic corrosion wasn't widely known, often leading to premature engine death. And then there were the head studs, half mounted perpendicular to the block, the other half at a 20-degree angle, creating a warped head disaster waiting to happen. This engine was a mess. The main bearings were too small, failing regularly, and the long, single-row timing chain stretched and required replacement after a while. And if the timing chain snapped, well, kiss those valves and pistons goodbye. This was not just a bad engine, it was the worst engine. The worst engine blunder, the most failed engine, the worst engine faults, all in one package. This is just the beginning of the Triumph V8 saga. We'll go deeper into the catastrophic consequences of this engine, the Stag's downfall, and the dedication of owners who refused to give up on this beautiful car, the engine's fatal flaws. So, we've established that the Triumph Stag was a beautiful car with some truly great ideas behind it. Now, you might be thinking, how bad could it really be? The Triumph V8 was initially conceived as a 2.5-liter unit, aiming to provide the performance needed for the Stag's aspirations. The original plan was to use Bosch mechanical fuel injection, a system that was expected to deliver both power and efficiency. However, reliability issues with the injection system forced Triumph to abandon it, opting for a simpler, but less efficient twin-carbureted setup. This decision would come to haunt them later. With the carbureted engine producing less power than the intended injection system, Triumph decided to increase the displacement to 3.0 liters. Instead of lengthening the crankshaft stroke, which would have been a more conventional approach, they chose to widen the cylinder bores. While this achieved the desired half-liter increase in displacement, it also created a massive over-square profile. Essentially, the cylinders were wider than they were tall, which significantly reduced the engine's torque. This is one of the classic signs of a bad engine design, a lack of torque being a direct result of the over-square profile. And if that wasn't bad enough, the wider bores ate into the space originally reserved for coolant passages, forcing Triumph to downsize these vital channels. This, in turn, dramatically reduced the engine's internal cooling capacity. It's like trying to cool a furnace with a thimble full of water. Remember, we're talking about a V8 engine here. While the aluminum head and iron block combination was not uncommon, it demanded the use of special corrosion-inhibiting coolant to prevent electrolytic corrosion within the engine. However, this critical requirement was not widely known, even among dealerships. As a result, very few owners used the correct coolant, contributing to a cascade of problems. Let's not forget about the water pump. Rather than placing the water pump in the usual location on the front of the engine, where it would be driven by the accessory belt, Triumph decided to mount it on the top of the engine, within the V of the cylinders. This arrangement required driving the water pump internally through a geared jackshaft, a complex and fragile system prone to catastrophic failure. The gears could shear without warning, causing the pump to stop spinning, leaving the engine stranded. And as if the water pump issues weren't bad enough, its placement meant that when parked on level ground, the water pump was higher than the radiator fill cap. So even if you could get the water pump spinning, you could never fully fill the coolant system. This meant that the engine was essentially running dry of coolant right from the start. Imagine having a car that could never be fully filled with coolant. That's a major disaster. But the most questionable design decision of all, and there were many, was the bizarre idea to use head studs at two different angles on the same head. This was another worst engine blunder, which is the textbook definition of a design flaw. The head studs, sturdy bolts that clamp the head to the block, should be perfectly perpendicular to the deck of the block. But Triumph decided to mount half of the studs at a 20-degree angle. This strange decision was made to simplify head gasket replacements, as it would avoid the need to remove the camshafts. However, the unintended consequence was major warping issues for the cylinder heads. Because the straight studs heated up differently than the longer splayed studs, the cylinder heads were subjected to uneven forces that caused them to warp, leading to further overheating and more problems. This was another major disaster for the engine and another sign of bad design. The engine also had a tendency to burn oil, which further added to the overheating issues. This was another problem that plagued the Triumph V8 that is one of the classic signs of a failed engine. The main bearings were also too small for the task, and would wear out prematurely, which is another problem that often comes along with failed engines. The timing chain was another weak link, stretching and requiring replacement every 40,000 kilometers. It was an interference engine, meaning that if the timing chain broke, the valves would collide with the pistons, causing catastrophic damage. This is a very serious problem that is common in many engines, and it is the most common failure of engines. The Triumph V8 was supposed to be a powerful and reliable engine, but it was plagued by a host of problems that made it one of the worst engines ever put into a production car. The combination of poor design decisions and an almost total disregard for basic engineering principles resulted in a catastrophic engine. The Triumph V8 was a disaster waiting to happen. The Stag would have been a much more successful car if it had been equipped with the Rover 3.5-liter V8. The Stag's demise is a cautionary tale for any automaker who doesn't take the time to engineer a reliable power plant for their vehicle. The Stag's downfall. The Triumph V8, a 3.0-liter engine meant to generate 145 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque, was a massive step back for a car aspiring to be in the same league as a Porsche 911. It was based on a twinned inline-4, a concept that sounded good on paper but ended up riddled with problems. Imagine having an engine that was so prone to overheating, it would literally warp its own aluminum cylinder head, limiting coolant flow even further. But the biggest blunder of all? The engine was designed to have its head studs at 2 different angles. This bizarre decision was made to make head gasket replacements easier, but it inadvertently caused major warping issues as the studs heated up at uneven rates. It was as if the engineers were trying to outdo themselves in finding new and innovative ways to make a bad engine even worse. This nightmare was further exacerbated by tiny main bearings that failed frequently, a long single-row timing chain that stretched and needed replacement every 40,000 kilometers, and an interference engine design where a broken chain would destroy the valves and pistons. It was a recipe for disaster, and it delivered. The Triumph V8 engine, in short, was a colossal failure. And it didn't just drag down the Stag, it became a symbol of all that was wrong with British motoring in the 1970s. The car itself was withdrawn from sale in the US in 1973, and production ended in 1977, with only 25,877 examples produced. The Triumph V8, a testament to poor design decisions and a misguided sense of pride, became one of the worst engine blunders ever made. Today, the Triumph V8 is still considered among the worst engines ever placed into a production car. But regardless of its disastrous reputation, approximately 91% of surviving roadworthy Stags are still fitted with this power plant, which can be considered more a testament to the determination of the owners and amateur mechanics that keep these cars running. The overarching sentiment of the entire Stag project being very much that it was a good car, ruined. So there you have it, the Triumph V8, a shining example of what can happen when ambition outpaces engineering. It's a testament to the fact that even a stunning car like the Stag can be brought down by a powertrain plagued with flaws. But the question remains, was it really the worst engine ever made? Sure, its design is a comedy of errors, over-square, undercooled, and prone to head warping with its ill-conceived head stud arrangement. It even featured a water pump perched precariously above the radiator fill cap, making it almost impossible to fill the cooling system properly. Add to that the fragile main bearings and timing chain, and it's a recipe for disaster. Even the 2.8-liter version that was intended to be installed in the TR7 Lynx could not save the engine from its fate. This engine, a hastily built power plant meant to bring Triumph into the realm of high-performance Grand Tourers, ended up as the ultimate symbol of British automotive folly. But maybe it's not all doom and gloom. This 90-degree V8 with its single overhead camshaft arrangement, a 3-liter displacement, and its iron block and aluminum heads was capable of delivering 145 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque. And it did sound absolutely fantastic, especially when pushed to its limits. In fact, there are still many Stag enthusiasts who keep their cars running despite the engine's flaws, a testament to their dedication and mechanical ingenuity. The question is, are you one of them? Do you think this is the worst engine ever made? Have you ever owned or worked on a Triumph Stag? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more automotive mayhem. And don't forget to follow Muscle Car Masters to stay up to date with all the latest news and reviews. See you next time.